Violence broke out for the 13th week in Paris as riot police took on yellow vest protesters. In the midst of tear gas and baton charges, one protester lost a hand in horrific circumstances. The cause of the injury has not been confirmed, but eyewitnesses claim he picked up a tear gas grenade that exploded in his hand. Brief clashes erupted on the Champs-Élysées between protesters and law enforcement, with the latter reportedly using batons and pepper spray. The protests, which were originally against the rise in diesel costs, have turned into a general discontent against French President Emmanuel Macron and high living costs. Various events are also planned in other cities including Montpellier, Lille, Nantes, Rennes, Brest, Caen and Lorient.
Anger is rising on the streets of Port-au-Prince. Protesters say the government is corrupt. They accuse President Jovenel Moïse of mismanaging the economy and are calling for an end to his rule.
Down with Jovenel. We are going to burn the country down if he does not step down.
We need a new government, a government that cares about the youth. We are tired of the current system.
These demonstrators say they aren't going anywhere until they force the president to step down. They're taking on the police and turning the streets into a battlefield. Destruction sending a clear message of discontent.
Supporters of Hungary's main opposition parties have held an anti-government rally in Budapest. The rally came after Prime Minister Viktor Orban's State of the Nation speech on Sunday. Another target was recently heavy fines given by the State Audit Office against several opposition parties. Opposition leaders said that the fines are motivated to hinder their campaigns for the European Parliament and municipal elections in Hungary later this year.
Thousands are protesting the Spanish Prime Minister's proposed talks on Catalonia. The government is considering appointing a mediator for talks to address the Catalan crisis. Huge crowds were seen there in Madrid. Critics called that a surrender to pressure from Catalan separatists and are now demanding early elections. This protest comes just 2 days before the trial of 12 Catalan leaders over their role in the region's failed bid for independence.
Hundreds of thousands of protesters gathered on the streets of Rome on Saturday to support Italian trade unions who are demanding respect from the government and firm policies on economic growth. Demonstrators are urging the country's coalition government to encourage massive public and private investment to secure more jobs. She says many sacrifices that have been made over the past few years could completely disappear, but we still have time. The government must stop, must call on social partners to reverse the negative course that our country is taking, and we must look to the future of work. Other union leaders also put emphasis on employment. Our country risks taking a step backwards. It's very worrying that we had 2 trimesters in a row with a very poor economic performance. Welfare is not enough, so we need to put employment center stage, and I believe that today's message is exactly that. First of all, jobs are an absolute priority. The government of the far-right League Party and anti-establishment Five Star Movement have been criticised for not being ambitious enough with its planned reforms. 12 trains, hundreds of buses and many low-cost flights were laid on to help union members to get to the protests.
Weather, again, it has buried the Pacific Northwest. Some areas around Seattle, Washington got more than 10 inches of snow, the most they've seen in 70 years. And the weight of all that snow and ice brought down trees and power lines. At least 36,000 people in the state were without power at some point yesterday. The snow is expected to continue to fall into Monday.
Lamentablemente, para nuestro país, lo que ha pasado hace 2 días en Aplao no solamente está referido a Aplao. Problemas serios tenemos en varias regiones del Perú y tenemos que atenderlos todos.
There's a huge problem on the Antarctic, and one that could have global consequences. Scientists have discovered a gigantic subterranean hole underneath the world's most important glacier. This has sparked concerns. It's melting faster than anyone realized. The cavity under the glacier is in West Antarctica, stretches 6 miles, and is 1,000 feet deep. To put it in perspective, it's about 14 billion tons of melted ice and about 2/3 the size of Manhattan in New York. It also could mean rising sea levels globally, which poses a serious threat to coastal cities around the world. One researcher said the size of the cavity under a glacier plays an important role in melting. As more heat and water get under the glacier, it melts faster. Researchers conducting the study said the cavity is growing at an explosive rate, which took them by surprise. For Global One, I'm Julia Bruck.
Indonesia, hot lava and volcanic ash spewed from Mount Krakatoa on Saturday, burying roads and forcing hundreds of people from nearby villages to flee their homes. Bad weather conditions are making it difficult for authorities to carry out rescue operations. Over 130 people have been evacuated so far, but authorities say more than 500 more need help. The volcano is located in the island chain of Sulawesi. It's been erupting since February 4th.
They're beautiful, sometimes bothersome, but without insects, scientists say life on Earth is under threat. A global review of studies into insect populations shows they're declining 8 times faster than mammals, birds and reptiles. At that rate, the world's insects could disappear completely within 100 years.
The base of the ecosystem is built upon insects. And if the insects disappear, then the whole ecosystems will collapse.
If the insects disappear, we're going to disappear too. The whole agricultural system depends, among other things, on the insects that are most vulnerable to extinction to control the other insects which compete with us for our crops. So this is a brilliant paper, but at the same time, one that scares the pants off of any biologist who understands how the world works.
It's not just the place of insects in the food chain that has scientists worried. They pollinate plants, purify the soil and waterways, recycle waste, and have an important role in pest control. And their numbers are declining by 2.5% every year. While climate change and urbanisation are factors, scientists point to the intensification of agriculture as the main culprit. The report's authors say insecticides have little real bearing on food production. Part of the solution is the overhaul of how the world grows its food to be more environmentally friendly.
It's an overly optimistic paper because It mentions the things that we should be doing in order to avoid the extinction of the insects. The point is, we're not doing any of them.
This isn't the first time scientists from around the world have issued a warning about threats to humanity. The first was back in 1993, the second was just last year. The problem is, they say, too few are paying attention. Miriam Nahond, Al Jazeera.
The same as people talk about yoga, people will be able to just talk about their witchcraft practice.
I can be sat in my garden with my pendulum, you know what I mean, asking questions.
Yeah, I think it will just become something that's completely normal, hopefully.
Someone who's a witch is someone who just practices witchcraft and magic. They're doing things like spell work, anything for like prosperity, to healing, whatever they want to do.
It's someone that's in tune with the elements around them.
Honestly, someone that just practices witchcraft. It's so open.
And also putting lots of stuff in tiny jars, which is great.
The most magical times I've had is just me in a room with a candle. You feel like time stops when you're practicing.
I use all sorts of things.
I tend to do spells in little satchels.
I like to do a lot of like spoken magic and like scrying with like crystal balls and things like that. It's something that gives me that like faith and hope and that connection to like spirit and nature.
Tarot card readings, I use crystals a lot, meditating.
My pendulum is probably my favourite. If I'm having a hard day and then I go home and I practice, it does calm me down and it makes me have a much nicer outlook on the world.
It was very much hush-hush, very much like unseen. But now, with like things like social media, it's massive, it's huge.
A lot of the stereotypes do creep in there in some aspects, but it's not fire and brimstone and you're like gathered around like a cauldron.
Because there are so many people putting their practice out there now, especially on Instagram, people are more accepting of it, like this generation especially.
It can be there for anybody.
People are really out and proud in terms of their like witchiness. In this kind of world where everything is so stressful, I think it's something for people to turn to, and the fact that it's something you can just practice at home, you can just do it in your room. The kind of ease of it is really what's made it boom. So there's their phrase, coming out of the broom closet.
It's very 50-50 on how people will react to it. Some people are very open to the idea and they'll accept it straight away, but some people have this idea that it's quite a satanic thing.
Witchcraft is going to be a practice that's going to be really accessible to a lot of people.
Don't worry too much if something doesn't make sense. Just follow your intuition.
It's very natural in nature and it's love.
People in the northern Indian city of Saharanpur are in shock. Families of those killed by contaminated alcohol are trying to piece together what happened. Two cities and a town in the same region coping with the same crisis.
He complained of severe stomachache, so I took him to get an injection. He was better then and slept after coming back home. The pain came back, so we took him to the hospital again.
A steady stream of patients are being wheeled into nearby hospitals. Time is of essence. Those who couldn't be saved are piled into trucks. But these are just the cases that have come to light.
We are trying to find out if anyone else has consumed the liquor. Has it been kept in any other homes? We are investigating.
The state governments of Uttarakhand and Uttar Pradesh have promised a crackdown on illegally brewed alcohol.
We have suspended 6 of our enforcement officials, including the inspector, the sub-inspector, among others who are responsible for curbing these kind of illegal trade.
According to a latest government report, at least 1,500 Indians died from drinking contaminated alcohol in 2015. The victims are often from poor communities who are unable to afford liquor from licensed shops and buy it from unregulated suppliers who use toxic chemicals and even pesticides to save costs. Priyanka Gupta, Al Jazeera.
Syrian Democratic Forces, backed by the US, began their last attack on so-called Islamic State-held territory on Saturday night. SDF troops, led by Kurdish fighters, have been holding out for the past 10 days. The announcement came from the SDF spokesman Mustafa Bali, who said it would be the final assault in the remaining 2 villages. In a tweet, he said, "Our forces have started the final battle to eliminate the last remnants of the ISIS terrorist organization." The battle is aimed at regaining control of al-Baghouz in the east of Syria on the border with Iraq. In the past week and a half, more than 20,000 civilians have been evacuated from the besieged area. This latest battle comes just days after President Trump announced that the terrorist group would be stamped out by next week.
Staying with the second Pyongyang-Washington summit slated for later this month in Hanoi to work towards reaching a deal on denuclearization, the 2 sides are set to hold additional talks. Park Hee-jun zooms in on the discussions expected to help them inch closer to an agreement.
With only 2 weeks remaining until the second North Korea-U.S. summit, a key question remains. Will North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump forge a deal that can satisfy both sides? North Korea and the U.S. are searching for a balance between what Pyongyang should do to fulfill its commitments toward denuclearization and what Washington should offer in return. Dismantling and verifying the North's Yongbyon nuclear complex will be the priority, as it's a key facility that produces both plutonium and uranium, 2 essential materials for making nuclear weapons. Kim mentioned it in the Pyongyang Joint Declaration last September. U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun also recently said at Stanford University that Kim pledged to shut it down. And ideal concessions from the U.S. could involve declaring an end to the Korean War and setting up a liaison office in Pyongyang. North Korea has also been demanding sanctions relief, but that would likely require a bolder step than destroying the Yongbyon complex. These were among the issues discussed in Pyongyang last week by Biegun and its North Korean counterpart, Kim Hyok-chol. The 2 sides are scheduled to continue their working-level negotiations in a 3rd Asian country next week. Their second round of talks should help lay the groundwork for the 2 leaders' joint statements and determine whether the second summit has more substance than the first. According to the Blue House, South Korean President Moon Jae-in is also expected to discuss a summit with President Trump, likely over the phone next week. How President Moon mediates between the 2 sides will also be an important variable that could determine the success of the upcoming Vietnam summits. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
That's right, Gordon, and the powerful images are still circulating on social media after thousands of faith leaders and lawmakers from around the world met right here in Washington for the annual National Prayer Breakfast. Abigail Robertson brings us a look at this rare moment of unity.
Political leaders in Washington put politics aside for a morning to take time to pray together.
Give him the insight that he needs, give him joy in the task, and use him for your kingdom's sake and for our nation and world's sake.
In a powerful moment, Republican Senator James Lankford and Democrat Chris Coons held hands with the president and prayed.
We ask that your wisdom, your blessing, and your peace would be upon him and his family as they serve us.
A tradition they lead each week in their bipartisan Senate prayer group.
It's fascinating to me the number of times that I'll have someone come up to me back when I'm back home in Oklahoma and will say, okay, I saw such and such person on TV, they drive me crazy. And I'll often smile at them and go, yeah, we stop and pray together every week. And very often the response is, really? you pray with that person?
Guy? The leaders intentionally steered clear of politics for this event.
We could focus on dozens of different divisive things. Instead, we're going to focus on what I believe has united Americans from the very founding of this country, which is a belief in God and a belief that this is a country with a creator and with a common sense of purpose that we can best find through prayer.
President Trump opened his remarks telling the audience full of religious leaders he stands with them.
I will never let you down.
Reminding them of his stance on religious freedom.
My administration has taken historic action to protect religious liberty.
And pledging to fight for faith-based adoption agencies, which have been under attack due to their biblical beliefs about marriage.
My administration is working to ensure that faith-based adoption agencies are able to help vulnerable children find their forever families while following their deeply held beliefs.
President Trump is the 12th president to speak at the annual breakfast since Dwight D. Eisenhower. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.